Well, 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 what do we have here? Phyrexian recording some random content. As you all know, I'm Phyrexian, also known as, my real name, Justin. And I decided today I was going to show off a little bit of what I'm doing in Magic Arena. Because it's a fun game. I'm playing zombies. As you can see, I only had 2 decks, because I put all of my apples, I should say, into this one barrel. And I guess I'll just go through what trash this deck is. I'm running 2 Time to Reflex, just because it's an amazing removal against the Scarab God. 2 Dread Wanderers. I need 2 more, but I'm too far away from the freaking rare wild cards. 4 Festering Mummy. It's just, another 1-drop to play along. This is an aggro deck. 4 Binding Mummy. This card, real good in the aggro mirrors. I out-aggro you with my Binding Mummy by tapping down your crap. Also, dope art. 4 Mummy Paramount. Probably the weakest zombie in the deck. I'll probably end up cutting 2 for the 2 other Dread Wanderers, and I'm not sure about the rest. Very frequently, I'll end up running Binding Mummy over Mummy Paramount on turn 2, just because it kind of guarantees more damage, right? If my opponent is gonna play a blocker, they could just block my potential 3 damage, whereas I get almost a guaranteed 2 damage with Binding Mummy. So I'm probably gonna end up cutting this. It's still decent, but it's not as explosive as I'd hope. 4 Wayward Servant, essentially the reason to be playing mummies, or to be playing zombies. Wayward Servant is absolutely insane, especially paired with the Vanquisher's banner. You just end up murdering your opponent. You can get to a board stall and you're just like, I don't care. I'll keep dropping zombies and I will keep draining you until you die. And I've absolutely won several stalled out games with Wayward Servant alone. I'm running a single Forsake the Worldly because this is still a singleton format. Obviously this is like a sideboard card, but sometimes you just need removal. I might end up forsaking the cards that are like answers, essentially just to make the deck, like the main deck, more streamlined, and just not care about coming up against removal. But we'll see what happens when we come to it. 1 Radiant Destiny. Radiant Destiny is a great buff. The Vigilance again helps in the mirrors. I'm not sure if I want to go up on this card because, you need a critical mass of zombies in order to get what you want aggressively. Like, there is going to be removal in the format, especially... where's it at? No, just black. Just black. This, Golden Demise, absolutely destroys this deck if I don't have a single Lord. But, with Radiant Destiny, this card's not as much of a problem. But with Radiant Destiny, I'm also, not running a zombie in his place, so it's possible I'll get rid of Forsake the Worldly for another Radiant Destiny. I currently don't have another one, but if after I get my Dread Wanderers I have more rare wild cards, Radiant Destiny is probably what I'd go for, although there's an argument to be made for Vanquisher's banner. Excuse me. I'm running 4 Lord of the Accursed. Fantastic that this card is uncommon, because I was able to use my wild cards essentially immediately to get this card. Just having the +1/+1 is great to deal with things like Magma Spray, which is really annoying at getting rid of your Festering and Dread Wanderers, as well as stopping, it's down here, but as well as stopping the triggers from your Plague Belcher. Additionally, just the fact that all of... Sorry about moving my mouse around. Especially since you get all of your zombies have Menace. Now, you can pair that with Radiant Destiny, right? As soon as you get the City's Blessing, your guys have Vigilance, so you can attack with Lord, and then before blockers, you can give them Menace, including Lord, which is fantastic. Adding in more Lords, having Radiant Destiny or a Vanquisher's banner out, your zombies can get pretty big pretty fast. And this card is so important to the deck. Obviously, I'd be running 5 if I could. Painful Lesson. I run out of steam, so I just have some card draw theoretically. When I get 2 more Dread Wanderers, I might not run out of steam as much, so I can probably cut a Painful Lesson. 4 Plague Belchers is very similar to Wayward Servant. Essentially, you're able to just not care if your board gets wiped, and just keep going wide, because you get your opponent in situations in which they have no good blocks, right? You have 1 or 2 Plague Belchers out, and you're attacking with a bunch of 3/3s, right? Even if they have profitable blocks on killing your guys, they're still going to be taking 2-3 damage, and that's not including the damage that either Plague Belcher is going to do or the unblocked creature because he has Menace. So Plague Belcher is great. A great combo you have with him is putting the counters on either of the 1-drops, because this one comes back, and Festering Mummy, you don't necessarily care if it dies. Essentially, you're getting, you're losing 1 damage during that attack, because usually you want to play Plague Belcher first, just in case things die. Also because of Binding Mummy, you're very often playing zombies on your first main phase and not your second because of this card. But you're losing out on an attack with Festering Mummy, but you're maintaining your Plague Belcher's 5/4 stats, and you're immediately triggering Festering Mummy's ability, which oftentimes is a little bit difficult depending on the matchup you're in. Mono red, often they're not going to be caring, and they'll be playing a bunch of first strikers and using magma sprays. So you're not going to be getting Festering Mummy triggers naturally. So this is a great way to kill their 2/1 menace guys, or make their first strikers, the 2/2 first strikers, a little bit smaller so you can deal with them better. Then we're running 1 cast out. Again, I'm not a fan of running a cast out, but for right now, I just feel that I need to have something to deal with essentially anything. I said I might take out all of the random answers to just make the deck streamlined and just not care when I get screwed by something. But cast out helps against any other pesky artifacts and enchantments, but mostly it's for other planeswalkers, just in case for some reason I can't get through, or it's decent against the black-green Explore deck that runs Vraska, because they run a ton of Golden Demise, so very frequently I'll find myself losing out on all my dudes, and then they land a Vraska and I just can't pressure it enough. So that's kind of why it's here. The cycling's okay, but I'm not convinced on it. I used 3 of my mythic cards, my mythic wild card, to make Liliana. My first mythic wild card was actually where is this monster? I made a Scarab God. Because I was like, oh, Scarab God. I have an EDH deck for Scarab God, and I was like, oh, this card's going to be fun to play. And then I found out, at the time, everyone was playing Blue-Black Control with Scarab God. And it was boring and lame. I didn't like those mirrors, so I switched over to zombies, and I've been having a blast. But that means I'm technically missing out on Liliana. At some point, I'll get the 4th. And I'm not necessarily sure I should get the 4th, because that puts me at 6 5-drops, but it helps a ton against the control decks, where it's just like, oh sweet, you countered all of my zombies and killed the rest, I have no gas. But being able to get back, the ones you always get back are Wayward Servant, Lord of the Accursed, and Plague Belcher. Or just being able to, on a board where you have a Wayward Servant, just keep cranking out zombies and eventually just wrath their board. And especially since no one else is playing zombies right now, the white-black deck of choice is vampires, but it's Merfolk, mono-red, vampires, as I said, blue-black control, and green-white cats, and then green-black explore. No one is running zombies, right? There's of course the few mummify things. Oh, right. White-black token life gain, or white-blue token life gain garbage, but sure, those guys, they always die. So other than the Eternalize and the Mummify, or whatever it is, there's no zombies. So her -7, which is not hard to get to, mind you, just wipes their board, and then I crack in for the win. It's great. Liliana, easy to explain. Vanquisher's Banner is the best card in this deck. The fact that it costs 5 is kind of lame, but as I said, I flood out so often, and it's possible I could, tweak the numbers, but I want to have a certain amount of lands because I want to be running Liliana Death Majesty. Vanquisher's Banner alone is worth having the mana to support 5-drops. That said, that doesn't mean I'm going to flood out a little, but a single zombie that I draw can become several. And the fact that it triggers on cast, not on enters the battlefield, means that even if I'm going against a control opponent who is constantly countering my zombies, I'm still able to just bully through all of the removal and things. Sadly, of course, it doesn't work with the Dread Wanderer because you just put it onto the battlefield. But who cares? Essentially, like, I'm not sure if I want to go 3 Liliana, 3 Vanquisher's Banner, or 4 and 2. But I would not consider someone running 3 or more Vanquisher's Banner to be incorrect. Like, that's just how good this card is. It just makes it so you can stay in games, and that is one of the hardest things to do in this deck. 8 planes because the deck builder told me to run 8 planes. 2 Shefet Dunes. Shefet Dunes and Ifnir Deadlands are essentially just here to trigger Dunes of the Dead. Shefet Dunes, I think, is weaker than Ifnir Deadlands, but I'm not entirely sure. I very rarely need it to be a buff, and very frequently I'm using it just to make that zombie off of Dunes. And you know, if I make the zombie off Dunes, I can get a trigger off Wayward Servant. I can get a trigger off Binding Mummy, so I can maybe crack in for a little bit more damage. But really, Ifnir Deadlands, and actually, do I have? I don't think I have another Ifnir Deadlands. No. If I had another Ifnir Deadlands, I think I would switch it. I think it would be 2 Deadlands. I've been saying Deadlands, and 1 Dunes. But you know, Dunes does come in handy against the, especially the Merfolk Mirror, where they're often having sizable creatures as well. They often will be running Vanquisher's Banner, or they have a 2-drop Lord where we have a 3-drop Lord. So it helps. Ifnir Deadlands though is utterly fantastic. It's a little slow against the mono red matchup, but in any other creature matchup, you just destroy things. It's absolutely fantastic. It can help you kill the stupid Merfolk Lord, as I was talking about earlier, as long as they haven't put a counter on it, which they often do. It can get around indestructibility. Because you are running this many deserts, and I'm not running like the cycle deserts because I'm in more of an aggressive deck, so I don't want them to come in tapped. These are the max I can run in tapped, and I want the color fixing. But we're running enough deserts that you can consistently get about 2 activations of one of these in a typical game, especially against a control opponent or specifically the Merfolk matchup. The other matchups are usually over a bit faster, but just having the ability to give -4 total to something like a god, especially Hazoret, is absolutely fantastic. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned that, but Time to Reflect is like the best that it exiles against specifically Hazoret and the Scarab God, because they never respect it. It's just like, I'm gonna attack with like 2 2-drops or something, and they're like, oh, why are they making this attack? I'm still at like 18, and they just block. They almost always just block, and I always get them. 7 Swamps again, because that's what the deck told me to do. 4 Forsaken Sanctuaries. It might be actually incorrect to be running any of these. I only have the Deserts and Liliana as double colored, and then a single Wayward Servant, which costs 1 of each. It's possible that I should just be running Swamps and Plains, and taking these out might actually allow me to put in maybe a single of each of these 2 deserts, and that, you know, will up my Deadlands and Dunes count by a little. So there's definitely an argument to be made for not running Forsaken Sanctuaries and instead running a single more Plains, a single more Swamps, and 1 of each of True and Glorified. But I'm not entirely sure. And then I'm running 2 Dunes of the Dead. I don't know if I have... Yeah, I only have 2. I'm not sure I would want to run 3 because they're not great alone. Like, you have to have Dunes and Deadlands. If you love Dunes and Deadlands enough, I can absolutely see the argument of running 2 Dunes, 2 Deadlands, 3... Oh, they're both called Dunes. 2 Shefet, 2 Ifnir, and 3 Dunes, just to make sure you're constantly proccing these 2 and this. But I would then then I would definitely not run the Desert of the True and Desert of the Glorified. It gets a little iffy, especially since you almost always want to be playing Wayward Servant as soon as possible. You want to cast this on turn 2 every time. Something I guess I should note is that you have to pay life for Ifnir and Shefet, but that almost never matters because of Wayward Servant. You gain in your average game probably about 2 or 3 life off of Wayward Servant. So using these for colored mana is not at all bad. As I said. Why am I running 61 cards? Well, essentially, I'm running 61 cards because I feel like I want to run 24 lands, but I don't want to be running only 25 creatures or 10 non-creatures. It's possible that I'll when I cut the Forsake the Worldlies and Painful Lesson to cast out and whatnot, it's possible I can go down to 23. But again, I'm not sure how well that would support 6 total 5-drops. And you really want to be able to get those 5-drops, especially since these are also kind of 5-drops because you need 5 mana to activate them. So I think 24 lands is correct. The percentage difference is not that big, but it's worth noting. And then blue-black control, go away. You know what? I don't need this. I've not touched blue-black control since I made Brains, so I'm going to be sticking with Brains. So that was kind of the weird deck tech thing. Apologies if this audio is terrible, but essentially I decided to do this on a whim. Let me know if you want to see me try any other decks in Arena. I might record a gameplay. I'm not sure, but until then, we will all be one.